Good morning. Good morning. You can tell it's been a long day. Welcome to Countryside School. My name is Beth Hurley, and I'm in my 9th year as building principal here at Countryside School. I had the good fortune of beginning my career in education right here in 1993. I started out as a special education aide and then as a classroom teacher until 2003. This school and this community holds a special place in my heart, and I'm delighted to welcome you all here this evening. Currently, we have 377 students, welcoming 2 more on Monday, enrolled across 19 classrooms. We have 80 faculty members that work hard to support the academic, social, and emotional needs of the children. We are in the early stages of planning for the Countryside Building Project. This year, we are taking steps to develop additional citywide special education programming here at Countryside. We've welcomed several students from across Newton to be supported by our teachers, and it's off to a great start. There are many reasons that I was drawn back to Countryside to be the building principal. It's the people. This community is, and has always been, incredible. When I use the term community, it includes the students, families, and faculty. Families are invested in their children's education, and we have an active, vibrant PTO that foster our sense of community. I feel so fortunate to have the children of some former students here at Countryside right now. Aside from feeling old, I recognize how special that is to see the next generation come through our school. The faculty is hardworking and dedicated to providing the best education for our students. Partnering with families to support our students is at the heart of what we do each and every day. For all the positives that I just listed, there are some challenges that we navigate each day. The biggest being the physical space in our building. We have tried to optimize the spaces in our building, but we do not have adequate spaces for small group work or sufficient space for gathering for assemblies. The heating and sewage problems in the building are problematic, and we have constant water in the basement, which has impacted our ability to safely store items. We've had to shut off restrooms to be repaired. Teachers have had materials ruined in their classroom from various leaks, and the heat upstairs can reach, or I should even say here in this cafeteria, can reach upwards of 80 degrees even on the coldest day in the winter. These factors provide a less than optimal learning environment for our students and faculty members, but I must commend the hardworking custodians and faculty members who strive each day to ensure that the limitation of the physical structure of our building do not impact our ability to be proud of our Countryside community. It's the people that are the heartbeat of the school. I feel fortunate that the Countryside is in the early stages of a potential building project. We recently had a visioning session with the architects, and the faculty is beginning to get excited. I'm grateful for everyone's participation here this evening, and at this point I would like to introduce Mayor Ruth Ann Fuller, who will do the next part of our evening.
Hey folks, Beth, thank you for the welcoming all of us to Countryside and the lovely introduction. Just a quick show of hands, how many people here are either current or former parents? We got lots of people who know this community well. I'm going to talk for a little bit. Aisha Farag and Toby Rober, 2 of our assistant superintendents, are going to speak for a little bit. You'll hear the voice of Josh Morse, our public buildings commissioner, because a bunch of the override funds will go towards rebuilding 3 schools. I also have to say a huge thank you to a few more people. We have our city engineer, Lou Taverna, and our traffic engineer, Isaac Prezant, with us in case you've got questions about roads. People often do. And I thank you to Joe Mulvey and John Miker, who helped with all things, making sure we can hear. Really grateful. And can I give one more shout out? Sam Nyman, where are you? Sam Nyman makes my life bearable. I don't know if he took off. The executive aide in the mayor's office, and thank God for Sam. I say that all the time. We have 3 school committee members with us tonight, Rajiv Parlikar, Emily Prenner, and Cove Davis. So if something, I suspect Toby and Aisha will take care of most of the school questions, but we have school folks here if that makes sense to hear their voices. There couldn't be a worse time to go to the voters of Newton and say, would you consider increasing your taxes? It's just a most difficult time. If you've gone to the grocery store this week, if you filled up your car, if you, thank you, John, if you have been watching the news, it's not a question if whether there'll be a recession, it's just kind of how hard or soft it's going to be. Where all of us are coming out of the pandemic, I think, still anxious and uncomfortable with the world. So I get it. That said, the needs in the city are real and deep and right in our face. So I did think it was absolutely the right time to put it before our Newtonians and let us as a community decide. Let us quickly go through some slides so you get a sense of what's in the package, and then we're here to answer questions mainly. 3 questions. 2 of them are what are called debt exclusion overrides. There's an individual question about Countryside. There's an individual question about Franklin. These are temporary tax increases in the sense that they last for the life of the bonds. We will issue 30-year bonds, so it's for a long time. But they does roll off, and they only start going into effect when construction begins. That's when we bond it, and we bond each school would be over a period of years. So it would be 2 or 3 years from now before any of that tax increase shows up on your bill. And then it'll take about 7 years before it's fully on your bill. Each project, both Countryside and Franklin, were estimating at a $61 million cost. That has been inflated. We think we've got all sorts of assumptions. Josh knows them inside and out. The reason why the dollar amount for Countryside is lower is because, thank goodness, the state is kicking in about 1/3 of the funding. Plus, I put $1.25 million of ARPA funds into the Countryside project already so we could get it rolling with the MSBA. Plus, I did negotiate with Northland a $1.5 million infusion of cash into Countryside as well. That's why it's lower. I'm going to hand this to Josh. He'll talk about Countryside and Franklin.
Thank you. So most all of us just went on the tour, so you all got to see firsthand the challenges with Countryside, but we have people watching at home, so I'll briefly go through it. But first, I'm going to mention our Franklin School. So Franklin, unlike Countryside, was built in the 1930s. It has several challenges, some of which are similar to Countryside. Franklin had additions shortly after they opened because of the baby boom. And it was built almost 100 years ago, long before special education, student services, support spaces. It was a traditional 1930s schoolhouse. It's just not conducive to 21st century learning. It was one of the schools that was evaluated by HMFH Architects and the Massachusetts School Building Authority in 2012 and again in 2016. It is one of our neediest schools in the district. And has, again, due to lack of space, has a lot of educational spaces below grade in the basement that was never intended to be occupied, certainly not intended to be a teaching and learning environment. The additions in the kindergarten wing also were supposed to be temporary in the 50s, and here we are 70 years later, still in those temporary classrooms, much like the annexes here at Countryside. So that is an incredible opportunity, not just for the school to step into the 21st century, but also for the community, because it's a wonderful site. And I'd like to talk about all of those. You'll hear me mention it at Countryside too. Countryside is an incredible opportunity for the school, but it's also a wonderful opportunity for the neighborhood. These are incredible assets, and they are the heart of a lot of these neighborhoods. You know, green space and athletic programs and gathering spaces and playgrounds and plantings and trees and biodiversity, the wetlands. There's so many opportunities here for the school and for the entire neighborhood. Speaking specifically to Countryside, and again, many of you got to see it firsthand, Countryside, back in 1953 when they built it, was built well below the water table, well below the water table. Why they did that is beyond me. Interesting little fact about Countryside, again, built in 1953. In 1954, they started designing an addition. They literally opened the doors and then immediately realized we don't have enough space for all the kids. In 1958, that addition was built, but they weren't done yet. 1986, 1990, 1991, 1999, and 2000, they added classroom after classroom after classroom. In total, they added 13 classrooms, doubling the size of the school. And the only support space that they added for all of those 250-ish plus 35 to 40 staff was one toilet, which right now is secured because in order to add that toilet, they had to grind and pump sewage over to this building to then grind and pump sewage out to the street because the building is too low. And anybody that knows how many people have kids at home, I know I struggle as a father with toilets and kids, and I have two. 250 kids in one toilet, you can just imagine trying to keep that operational. Oh, and by the way, the staff have to share that too. So Countryside, again, chronic flooding in the basement, not enough space throughout the school. There's just the challenges are endless. And as I mentioned in the tour, and I think it's really, really important to keep this in mind, the Massachusetts School Building Authority, when they came out and looked at the school, they selected us. Why is that important? There's almost 1,800 schools in the Commonwealth. 15 were selected as being the worst in the Commonwealth that made them eligible for this program. We were one of them. That's huge. I'm going to quickly mention the Horace Mann School, and then I'll turn it back over to Mayor Fuller. So Horace Mann School is part of our operating override, and I'll just briefly mention the Horace Mann School is a little different. Horace Mann used to be at 687 Watertown Street. That's the school next to Albemarle. It is now over at 225 Nevada Street, the former Carr School, now the Horace Mann School. Perfect, thank you. And what you'll see here is this school was redone in 2013 as a swing space school, meaning a school that other schools go to while their schools are being redone. Ainger, Service, Cabot. But it's lacking a lot of space. It just needs more space. It needs more special education space and support space. As you'll see in the far left-hand side, the classrooms are undersized, the library is woefully undersized. It's lacking the special education spaces, and the ones they have are too small, and the cafeteria is extremely small. The addition, as you can see on the right-hand image, the red brick portion here, that is what we're proposing to give Horace Mann the space that they need so that they can step into 21st century learning as well. And lastly, I'll just close by saying for all three of these schools, the teachers, the principals do an incredible job, but they should not be succeeding in spite of the building. The building is supposed to support their efforts. They're supposed to make it a special place. It shouldn't be a struggle every day to make the school a special place.
If you don't mind going backwards. Oh, there you go. You already did. Thank you. So I mentioned three questions altogether. Two are what are those called debt exclusion questions. The third question is what's called a general override question. It is a permanent increase in taxes of $9 million, just north of $9 million. And it has a number of different elements in it. It has this one building component in it. In addition, I'll go through them in the further slides. You'll see areas that really touch our lives. So we're putting forward $1.4 million towards both the condition of our streets and sidewalks and the safety of our streets and sidewalks. The number one thing I hear about when I'm in the grocery store or at a village day or out and about, you would think it was schools, but it actually isn't. It's usually about roads and sidewalks. It's obvious they need work. We're also putting forward an additional $1 million for athletic fields and parks, basketball courts, tennis courts, pickleball courts, and playgrounds. Again, it's kind of always astonishing to me. We have 600 acres of green space in the city in 165 locations, and we just simply need to take better care of them. We've put forward an additional $500,000 towards our trees. We're about half the number of trees in the city compared to 50 years ago. We have about 22,000 street trees. We used to have 44,000. We both need to plant more, but we actually have, it turns out when you plant a tree, those first 5 years in particular, you really have to take care of them, watering and pruning. Plus our older trees also need love and TLC. So yes, they are beautiful, but also in this world, they really help with the heat island effect and flooding and air quality, so they're a huge win-win-win. We are also tucked into this $500,000 for our oldest residents. That would be a 57% increase in city funding towards senior services. Pre-pandemic, we needed to do this. Post-pandemic, it's right in our face. This is our largest and fastest growing demographic here. Looks like New Cal, the new senior center in Newtonville will open in a couple of years to really take advantage of that facility and have all the programming and services there. It's yet another reason to increase the funding. I think the city of Newton, if this passes, will be the first community in Massachusetts that has put into an override dollars specifically to address climate change. In this case, it gets back to buildings again. We're trying to shift off of fossil fuels and onto electricity, because as we all know, electricity can be powered by renewable sources. The first two buildings that we'd like to use this funding for are, one is another elementary school, Pierce, which is still using oil as their source of fuel, and the library, which, did you guys know that the Newton Library competes with the Boston Main Library? They are either 1 or 2 every single year for the busiest libraries in the Commonwealth. Well, the HVAC system there is failing, so we need to redo it, and we should redo it all electric, which that's the plan. I'm going to shift over and let Aisha and Toby take over. Please know that the override dollars, 75% of them between the buildings and the $4.5 million in the operating override, are for students. They're for kids, they're for education. Newton forever has held that core value that we lean in hard on supporting our teachers and educators, our families, and our children. And it is so fitting and proper that that's what this override is all about.
Thank you, Mayor. Hi, everybody. I'm Aisha Farag. I am the Assistant Superintendent for Elementary Education and joined by my colleague, Toby Romer, Assistant Superintendent for Secondary, and we work closely together at the Ed Center. Our interim superintendent, Kathy Smith, is with City Council tonight. And so we're here in her stead, representing the Newton Public Schools, ready to talk to you tonight about what the override means for the Newton Public Schools. But really, I think, what we do best as educators is give you insights into what do the schools need, what's going on in our schools, what do the schools need looking ahead, and the ways in which this community has been supporting education in Newton. So it feels like maybe the first thing to do tonight, we thought, was to show you what we've been up to since the last override. And so there is a short video, and then we'll talk more about some of what's been going on in our schools. Thank you, Jeff.
Maybe not.
Maybe not? Okay. Come back. Well, we'll come back to it.
Website, newtonma.gov/override, and it's there. It's worth watching.
So, I think this is something certainly that I feel comfortable speaking to a bit, and I may miss a couple things, but I can tell you I joined the district in 2013, just after the last override, and was a building principal at that time. And I remember being really excited about the work that was going on to make sure that the students had class sizes that were reasonable, that really allowed teachers to get to know students and work with them carefully to address their various needs in small classroom environments, and that this was happening across the district, a real attention to class sizes. We were also looking at ways to meet students' individual needs. What positions were needed, such as interventionists, to be able to make sure that students got just-in-time supports, that at the time that a student might demonstrate a struggle, that we were able to meet their needs, that we were able to have enough staff in our schools such that students who needed additional enrichment or advancement, we were able to provide for a myriad of needs within our classrooms across our grade levels. One of the things that was so exciting to add in these last almost 10 years since the override was full-day kindergarten in the district. So terrific that we were able to have a full-day kindergarten program and bring all of our students in kindergarten in for a full-day program. And this was something that the community was really very interested in and really pushed us to consider and to make happen. And so some of those kinds of things, and as well as you know, improvements in buildings over the last number of years. If you think about Ainger coming online and Cabot and Zervis, these beautiful new buildings that really support learning for students in ways that are really helpful for the teachers and for kids. And I think just convey the importance of learning through the spaces, right? They convey that we really care about learning through the design of those spaces. So those are a few things that come to mind right off the bat. And so now we find ourselves looking at, what is needed now 10 years later. So we'll talk more about that tonight. But first, sort of give you the recap of what's going on in the district right now. It's very hard for me to be a seated speaker. There's a lot of energy in this body. Let's see here. Can we move ahead? Oop. Okay, so you may wonder, a natural question is, how does Newton compare to surrounding districts? And so if you look at this, looking at the student-to-teacher ratio, you'll see that we're not the highest and we're not the lowest. It is important to note that this includes all staff members. So this isn't class sizes. This is taking all of the students in the district and all of the staff in the district to arrive at a ratio. But you can see, and I won't read it to you, but that, again, not the highest, not the lowest. Looking ahead, thanks, Josh. Again, with per pupil expenditures, looking at where do we fall. And once again, you see a similar trend in that we are not the lowest, and yet we are not the highest. And you can compare these numbers to a variety of surrounding communities. Hand things over to Toby.
Thanks, Aisha. I'll take over on some of the secondary, post-secondary outcomes. We're really proud of the work we've done around ensuring that all of our high school students are graduating in 4 years whenever that's appropriate. So you see the high rate here as well as the very, very small dropout rate. Again, with a lot of our data, you'll find us in the middle or here near the top of the pack, and that's ongoing work that we've been doing and we've been able to do with some of the investments that we've had for supplemental supports, ensuring that all students are achieving at high levels academically, but also thriving in terms of their wellness and being able to graduate on time and go on to post-secondary education, which this is a graph of the post-graduation plans of our graduating seniors from just the year before last, the most recent data. And you see 86% of students planning to attend, moving on to 4-year colleges, as well as a range of other outcomes there. Is 2-year college is another post-secondary, a big part of that, but lots of investment in our school counselors who do not only social and emotional support work with students, but post-secondary planning and support at the high school level. And of course, the high levels of achievement that we have allow them to access a wide range of great post-secondary options. So we're very proud of that. And then thinking about a lot of those investments and connecting it back to what Josh was talking about in terms of what 21st century schools look like with special education spaces and breakout spaces. We're incredibly proud of the very low number of students compared to our peer districts that need to attend specialized programs outside of the district based on a disability or other intensive need. So that number of only 1.5% of students attending schools outside of our district is a sign of all the wide range of programs that we have here in the district for students with disabilities or other specialized learning needs. We're able to meet their needs here. We need the spaces and resources to do that, but because of that investment, it's actually much more cost effective, and students are able to stay at their local school, in their elementary zones, in programs within the district at the secondary level, and it makes a huge difference on the quality of life for families and students and allows them to really succeed. So that's another wonderful data point that we're feeling very good about and is connected to those resources. One other just piece of data, not about the schools in general, but just about the state of the youth today, is the increasing concerns about mental health and wellness of our young people. Obviously, having gone through the pandemic in what was already a very challenging and stressful world to be growing up in, we've seen a continual rise of mental health referrals and similar kind of behavioral health concerns for young people. So we're constantly working to try to build in more of the supports within schools and within our school environments, as well as within the broader community, partnering with other agencies to make sure we have the supports. So as students are engaged at school and learning, they're also getting the other kind of resources and supports that they need. So these are our mental health referrals to the William James Interface Program, which helps to place students with counselors and therapists in the community, but also indicative of the larger challenge that we face and goals that we have to make sure students' well-being is addressed to allow them to access all the academic opportunities within the district. So that's a little overview of sort of the big picture where we are in terms of data and some of the outcomes and the impact of the investments in the schools. I'm going to turn it back over to Aisha to talk a little bit about the override investment operating budget.
Thanks, Toby. So looking ahead at what does the override mean for our district, I am going to stand up. I can't sit. It's been a long day of sitting. But thinking about, these are the pieces of things that as we think about what is it that we're really looking for, if you imagine, if all of you think about children in your lives, whether it's your own children, your neighbors, grandchildren, what is it that you want for a school experience for your kids? And some of the things that we're thinking about is how we want to make sure that we're maintaining a really strong rigorous academic program for all of our students at all levels. We want to make sure that we're maintaining a network of elementary schools across the district, these school communities that are welcoming and inclusive. People on the tour today talking about how much they love Countryside School, right? They love the community feeling at our school. And people in each of our elementary schools, high schools, middle schools talk about what those schools feel like, and we're committed to maintaining those kinds of communities. Toby talked about the need for mental health supports for our students. Students can't learn if they're feeling stressed, anxious, depressed. We need to make sure that we're meeting their needs. So making sure that we have strong mental health supports is important. And finally, as we think about preparing students for their futures, we know that technology plays a big role, and we need to prepare them by having modern, innovative, and readily accessible technology as we prepare them to launch out into the world with the necessary skills and knowledge. So looking at this, we think about, under this heading of strong, challenging, and engaging academic program of studies, what are some of the things that we have been able to do with community support that we're really committed to sustaining? And those kinds of things are making sure that we have small class sizes. We hear about this a lot as a commitment and as a priority from families who want to make sure that class sizes are reasonable enough for teachers to be able to really know their student and be able to meet their needs. We're making sure that we have specialist teachers to enrich our children's learning. That there is academic coordination across the district, including content specialists who are able to stay abreast of all of the most recent research, to understand the standards, to help our teachers improve their content knowledge and instruction so that our students are receiving high quality instruction. And multiple pathways for diverse learners, and we think about the variety that exists at the secondary level with AP classes and the career and technical education courses. There is really quite so different from what I remember growing up in terms of those options, but how important those are for, again, motivating learners, investing them in their learning, but preparing them for their future, which is different than right now, right? They're going out into a world that we're just imagining now, right? We're preparing them for that future ahead. And so then thinking about, again, how important having inclusive and welcoming schools and school communities are, this is something that we value so greatly in the Newton Public Schools and have really committed to. And time again hear from our families how important this is. This makes an experience with a school. Thinking about, once again, having, there are some communities you are no doubt aware that have more centralized schools, right, where you may have one or two larger elementary schools where students may come from around a larger geographic area. In Newton, that's not the case. We maintain, currently we have 15 different schools across elementary schools around the district. We make sure, as Toby had said earlier, about in-district programming to serve the needs of diverse learners. This is important to make sure we are committed to all learners, all of our students in Newton. We want them coming to school here in Newton with their peers, and making sure that we are creating programs that are responsive allows us to do that. Our ELL program, serving students who speak more than 50 languages. This is a population in Newton that is growing. We are we're growing quite rapidly right now, with many students being served through our English language learner program. And we know that the athletics and fine arts and clubs and activities, those things beyond the classroom are so important for enriching students' learning opportunities to connect with peers and explore interests. And these are all things that we look to sustain.
I'm going to take over a little bit and take Aisha up on the standing up opportunity. Great. And just a couple more areas that we'll dive a little deeper into that we want to maintain our investment and really ensure that are part of the successful Newton Public Schools program going forward. So I talked a little bit before about mental health supports and how we built those into the fabric of the school communities. We have school counselors, social workers, psychologists in all of our school buildings who are able to help respond to the varying needs of students, and that's really important. We have social emotional interventionists. I know Beth mentioned on the tour the location of the office here at Countryside, and that's an important part of the elementary program. And then thinking about just the ways that we've woven, not just through those staff positions, but woven programs focus on developing students' well-being and their overall balance and mental health into the academic program through their classes, through their academic experiences to ensure that there are positive outcomes on all fronts. And again, I mentioned the referral program earlier in looking at mental health data. We have community partnerships that also allow us to support students needing more support and intervention around mental health. So another big part of what we're currently doing, we want to maintain. Another area that I want to highlight a little bit on the next slide is our commitment to modern, innovative technology in our classrooms. One of the investments from the override 10 years ago allowed us to have in place before the pandemic started one-to-one technology already for our high school students, as well as the full Google suite of platform that allowed us to work relatively seamlessly, of course not perfectly, in trying to move into so much more of the digital work that had to happen over that course period. And since that time, we've continued to invest further in technology for students to make sure that they have a 21st century experience. And that's not just about the technical skills that they're gaining through that. And for the most part, it's not about that. It's about access to innovative and engaging interactive curricular experiences to complement the face-to-face and in-person work they're doing all the time. It's about the creative aspects of having technology that are being accessed through art and other programs that allow students to really express themselves. It's about their access to different kinds of texts and videos and ways of learning content and ways of practicing that, and even through assessments where we're able to get a much quicker and better sense of students' reading levels and other aspects of how they're learning and to respond to that because of the technology we're able to leverage. So we want to keep being able to do that going forward. The big question everybody has, why is this $4.5 million needed for the operating budget to support and maintain the good work we're doing? There's a number of areas in which costs are rising for our public education much faster than the typical 3.5% annual yearly budget increase that the city budget and the mayor's office is able to support. So when we look at the cost of transportation, we look at the cost of health insurance, look at what we need to do to maintain both the in-district and the smaller percentage of out-of-district programs for students with intensive needs. The costs of all of those are going up much more rapidly than we're able to meet with this. And of course, the current moment we're in with inflationary costs is only exacerbating that. But these are issues that sort of structural issues with the cost of education we've been facing for a long time. And we have to make hard choices when we look at those costs rising much faster than so many of the other parts of the education. And we've also had to use thoughtfully and carefully with the support of the mayor's office some of those one-time funds that came from funding sources during the pandemic, as well as our ability to save money and roll it over into the next year to make sure we're doing that. So we're already doing those things, but to make those investments sustainable in technology and building maintenance and mental health supports, we need the ongoing support in the operating budget to do that. So that's really the key idea here for us in the Newton Public Schools going forward with this operating override. This is what's going to allow us to continue to maintain and support all the programming and services in some of those facilities that are so important for continuing the work that we're doing. I think there I'm going to turn it back over to Mayor Fuller.
Following your lead, I'm going to stand up too. We just have a couple more slides, then we're open for any question you might have. The easiest place to figure out, so what does this mean for me, which is, like all of us, the first question, is go to newtonma.gov/override and go to the calculator. Plug in your address and you can see exactly what this means for you. If you go to the next slide, Josh, here's two examples. It's still astonishing to me. The median valued home in Newton is now $1.2 million. Sigh. If you happen to be somebody who's at the 1.2 million valued home. The operating override I mentioned kicks in immediately. So starting next July, you would see an additional $290 on your tax bill. And remember, the debt exclusions only kind of feather in over time as we actually sell the bonds. By the 7 years from now, the full bonding will be done. That would add an additional $183 in fiscal year 30. If, let's say, your home happens to be valued at $750,000, the immediate impact is $173, and then 7 years later, you'll see the full additional amount of an additional $110. I get this asked a lot, so I thought I'd just put it in here because people ask all the time. So do we have high property tax rates? Oddly enough, we don't. We have low tax rates. The problem is we have really high valued homes. So it's really hard to buy into Newton because our homes are so expensive. So even if you take a low tax rate and you multiply it by a highly valued home, you end up with high property taxes. So that's what's going on here in Newton. Next slide. Probably the thing that gave me the most pause about coming forward with an override was thinking about people who either are on fixed incomes or have low incomes. It's really hard to go to somebody and say, will you please increase your taxes? What we did, therefore, is come forward along with the override questions, and I've put before the City Council all the paperwork. So we have 9 tax assistance programs. Paperwork is in front of them. Double 7 of the 9 programs and expand the other 2. Yes, they are primarily targeted. You have to be an older resident, you have to be disabled, or you have to be a veteran. And by the way, that's what state law allows a city or town to do tax assistance for. Next slide. This is almost the final slide. Some cities and towns go to their voters fairly frequently and say, we need to build a new school. Will you help pay for it? We need to expand some programs. Will you pay for it? Newton doesn't have that tradition. We've only passed 2 overrides ever. One was 20 years ago. One was 10 years ago. And as I said, it's rotten timing given the economic cycle plus the hangover from the pandemic to come now. But it is literally 10 more years later, so it actually is kind of logical. And I think, by the way, it's a fair question for all of us to say, so should we have smaller, more frequent overrides? I'm happy to brainstorm with everybody about that. Is that the last slide? That was the last slide. We're here to answer any questions, and so I think this woman first, and then we'll go to you. Just start raising your hands, and we'll do it. If I can ask a favor, just try to make the questions short so that we can get to lots of people. What's on your mind?
So you put up on the slide the various costs for building the school and the different programs. There was a fixed cost. You displayed it. So why is there a never-ending tax? Like, why is there no end to that second tax you said that's going to hit in year 7?
So if you can go back to, no, go forward, go to that one. The questions 2 and 3, they will end after 30 years. So those do end, and that tax will go. It's the first one, the operating over is a permanent increase, and that's because we permanently need to have more funding to provide all the services. And by the way, the largest cost to us as taxpayers, no surprise, are the Newton Public Schools. It's fitting and proper. About 65% of all our tax dollars go to education. And we do need to permanently increase the budget for NPS. And we just are trying to do so much, fix our roads and plow the streets when it...
Is your budget increase for that what you just described in line with normal inflation, like not inflation of today, but normal, say, 2% inflation? Is it?
So the question is, this increase, we haven't increased our taxes other than do all of you know what Prop 2.5 is? Let me just double check. In the early 1980s, state law was passed that taxes can only go up by 2.5% overall for all of us together, plus what's called new growth. If a new building gets built, that's added onto it. So all cities and towns have been operating under Prop 2.5. In low inflationary periods, you can sometimes squeak by, except that we keep adding new initiatives. You know, we have, let's say, NUMO, Newton in Motion, around, that wasn't here 10 years ago. So we tried to do more, we tried to do better. But yes, we've done a ton of stuff in the last 10 years, not using override dollars. And now to actually be able to do what we want to do, we do need to increase it. What it is, though, the operating override, it's a one-time bump up by about 5%, but after that, we go back to the 2.5%, if you're tracking my math. If you're not tracking me, I can tell more, but, hi.
Am I correct that there are going to be 3 questions put on an election to the entire city to vote on?
You are correct.
Do we know when that's going to happen?
Tonight, some people are meeting with the city council. Our COO, CFO, and the superintendent are over there. I've suggested that March 14th be the date. That's just before the budget is finalized, so we know, do we have these funds or not? So look for mid-March. I suspect they'll pick mid-March, but both the Election Commission and the City Council have a say on the date.
Just one more. And will that election ballot include the text of what we're voting on?
Yes. There'll be text in that, and we're trying to get the word out so that you can think about it ahead of time. One more while we're... Go for it.
I wanted to ask, you said that $290 for the home is just paid 1 year and every year?
So I'm getting full disclosure. The $290 in the first year, it will be permanent, and it is very likely to increase by 2.5%. So, yep, you can keep going. Go for it.
What is the kind of interventionist you suggested? I never heard of that.
I'll let Aisha and Toby.
Okay. Interventionists are teachers who work to provide academic interventions. And so if there is a student, so every fall, for example, let me just tell you what we just went through in school. I should have Beth speaking to this. You could have a variety of voices. But Beth, I'm going to ask you if I leave anything out or a key detail that you think is important for me to add to this. But so every fall, we assess our students. We take a look at, in the elementary schools, where our students have been home for the summer. Where are they right now? How's their reading? How are their math skills? We take a look at, what do they need? And we have the grade level curriculum. that we're teaching, and all teachers are preparing to teach. We recognize, though, that sometimes some students need additional support, and sometimes students need a reteaching, or they need to go back and fill in some foundational skills. Our interventionists work with small groups of students to provide that kind of more tailored instruction to help bring students up to speed. The goal is, with the interventionists, that we're intervening, that we're providing just-in-time support so that those skills, that gap doesn't widen. Because the older a student gets, the harder and harder it is to fill those gaps. And so we hope, and the interventionists work most prominently with our youngest grades, although we provide support across the grades. But the goal is that we're providing that just-in-time support. One teacher and a class of 22 students, that's a lot of kids with a lot of different needs. And so they are a part of the team that exists. Education's a team sport. There was a number of different positions that work to make sure that our students are getting the instruction they need.
They are teachers who are full-time doing intervention?
They are, in most cases, they're half-time positions in our schools. Yeah.
I want to ask one more question. We live directly across from the Countryside School. Our children went here many years ago. But I wanted to know, how many years will the school essentially not be functioning as a school? And which years are they?
A hand up.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Great question. So the question was, how many years and kind of the timeline for when the school won't be functional? The answer might surprise you. So we are going to evaluate a couple different options, one of which is we know that we most likely are going to want to build a school in the higher portion of the site, which happens to be where the school is not right now. So one option is to leave the Countryside School operational and build on the higher part of the site. Construction fence and safety controls and a nice work plan and a parking management plan, which will be well communicated with the neighbors. And the other option is for the Countryside School to go across town to the current Lincoln Elliott School to use that as swing space. If that occurs, they will be gone for 18 to 24 months while we do our addition renovation or demolition and new construction. If they stay here, same thing, 18 to 24 months, but they'll stay in the school. So.
And what years are those like?
Perfect. Thank you. So right now we are anticipating breaking ground in 2025 and finishing the school in 2027, possibly earlier depending on whether we decide new construction or addition renovation. Addition renovation tends to take a little longer, new construction tends to be a little faster.
Between those two options, which is your preferred?
I don't have a preferred. I like to work with the community so that we all make the decision together. Not my first rodeo. Yes, sir.
Some other questions relevant to immediate neighbours. So one is drainage. Currently when it rains hard, all the water comes down the hill, floods into the basements and garages of the immediate neighbours. If you're raising the land here and it starts draining to the street, that could make it even worse. But if you're going to change the streets or the drainage and bring all the streets along, that's one thing. Another, of course, is noise. Time in the morning, you could be starting construction. Currently, when snow removal happens, there's a lot of reverse beep, 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 beep noises during the night and in the early morning, which is disruptive. If that's going to be the case for 10 months or 18 months, that would be quite unpleasant. And the final question is, I think you're going to build up. So currently, this is a one-story building. So if you're going to build second or third floors, there might be windows that immediately across from people's bedrooms and bathrooms.
There you go. 3 great questions. All right, so I'll take stormwater first. The good news is there are laws that preclude us from sending any more stormwater off our site. And we like to go above and beyond because we're never satisfied to do the bare minimum here in Newton. So what we're going to be doing here right now, almost half the Countryside School site is impervious space. It just is hard surface, which means that the current situation, we're shedding a lot of water off-site. The new Countryside School, or the addition renovation, doesn't matter which direction we go, will be required to capture and infiltrate all stormwater that falls on our site. meaning that we have to improve what we're currently doing by at least about 50%. And we're, again, not allowed legally to send any water off our site. So we're going to make it better than it currently is for the neighborhood around us. I can't say that we're going to fix everybody's flooding in their basement, but certainly we have to leave the situation better than we found it. As far as the noise and construction hours, so we are bound by the same rules that everybody else is when it comes to construction. Our normal construction schedule is 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. And not a minute earlier. So I will communicate that out. Folks will be getting certified letters from me again with our contact information. I have on-site staff project management. You'll have their cell phone number. You'll have my cell phone number. If a truck shows up here at 6:59, I want you to call me at 6:59. It is in the contract. They are fined if they show up early. And we are very, very adamant about that. We'll occasionally do some weekend work, but if we do it, we'll communicate it out ahead of time, and we are very respectful. We tend to start later in the morning on the weekends if we need to work then. And your third question? Windows, very good question. So the building will be taller. This school is actually 2 stories. Our school will be 3, but I will say this, in fairness, this school is 2 stories, but it's sprawled out back as all single story. So it is a very low building on the lowest part of the site. We're going to put a higher building on a higher part of the site. You're 100% right on the concerns, and that's something we faced on Ainger, on Zervis, and on Cabot. Those are all in very dense neighborhoods. We have abutters on Ainger. The Quans live 12 feet away. So we communicated. Emily knows it well from those conversations. Shout out to the Quans. They're very lovely people. So we're going to become very friendly with everybody in the neighborhood. We're very sensitive to the windows that face our abutters. We actually think about our floor plans to try to make sure that we're putting where we can back of house or spaces where we don't necessarily need windows, or if we have them, they could be treated so that we're not bothering neighbors. We give a lot of thought to our lighting programming to make sure that we're shutting our lights off. It's good for the environment, and it's good for our CFO, but it's also great for the neighbors because we don't want to be light polluting the area. And that's an iterative process. There's public hearings that are involved. You'll have opportunities to speak. I would encourage folks to join our meetings for our building committee. That's where you can, it's an open meeting. I promote everybody to panelists. We're all at the same virtual table, and you could tell us if we're out to lunch, and we have thick skin and we can take it. But we'll do our best not to be out to lunch very often.
I'm going to call you Sebastian's dad. Lou Taverna, can you give a wave? Go visit with Lou Taverna at the end of this, who is our city engineer and is literally an expert on water, sewer, stormwater issues. You guys can chat a little bit about the particular situation you're facing.
You're blessed to have a brook running from... Thank you. Yeah, you're blessed to have a brook running behind the building here. It runs from the east to the west toward the Charles River. This will give us a golden opportunity to look at the condition of the brook and the culvert that the brook sits in as we further the design with the school. So we'll certainly take a look at that brook and its impacts on the school and on the drainage.
Great. Hi.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm a neighbor. I'm a parent. I have a 1st and 4th grader here at Countryside, and so this is obviously a project that's near and dear to my heart and very important. I just wanted to briefly ask a question. I'm also a leader of the Countryside Green Team and wanted to speak to a concern we had. We are most intrigued about the concept of the school being a school in a park. And I think that with the adjacency to the wetlands, there's a lot of exciting opportunities. I could go on, but I'll be brief. But I just wanted to note that Countryside already has some very lovely green elements. There's a grove of mature oak trees along Dedham Street there, and that are probably 200 years old. And there's also some mature trees by the playground and the wetlands. And I would think it would be relatively easy to preserve these trees based on where they're located. They're in the hillside or they're over in the playground area. And I think, given traffic concerns, it would make sense for many reasons to not tear down these trees. So I would hope that protection of these trees is already written into the school plans. I don't know if it has been, but if not, I would strongly urge that that be codified into the official building plans. I think that's really critical for this project to truly be a school in a park. Thank you.
Lovely question. I'll let Josh, our Public Buildings Commissioner, speak to it.
Thank you very much. So the short answer is yes, we're going to preserve the trees. Perimeter trees, especially mature ones, are awesome. They're good for a lot of reasons, like light in people's windows. So no, environmentally, socially, fiscally, it makes an awful lot of sense to leave them. I will say we also have a lot of checks and balances here in the city. If you didn't know it, I think we have 76 committees and commissions. I have to go through like 32 of them for a project. The good news here for all of you and for the trees is that I have to work through the Conservation Commission, and they're going to feel very strongly that we preserve as many of those as possible as well. And I'm really looking forward to the wetlands. I think there are tremendous opportunities for pollinator gardens, bioswales, expansion of wetlands, restoration of some of the wetlands along the edges by where the modulars are, the integration into the teaching and the learning opportunities with Countryside. There's so many opportunities here. So, thank you.
Other questions? Here come. There you go.
So last spring, the MPS budget was approximately $4 million short. Is that correct? Initially, at the start of it, and then we're asking another $4.5 million. Will this make up for not having, or will this put the city in a place where you're not going to have to use ESSER funds, ARPA funds to like Band-Aid the problem of the budget? Yes.
I love your question, and I'll try, but Toby, if you want to keep adding on. It isn't just sheer coincidence that the Newton Public Schools pieced together, it was actually closer to $4.5 million in funding to fund our current school year. It's called carryover, is the technical term, which means that the $4.5 million built into the operating override is essential to be able to continue doing the important and good work that the 80 teachers here at Countryside do and the other close to 2,500 people do every day. So it will be a very tough budget season for here in the city if this doesn't pass.
I imagine it'll be a repeat of last spring where it was cutting health services, literacy.
I think it will be worse because there isn't the ARPA funding to fall back on. So.
So I am new to Countryside. I have a first grader here. We moved here specifically for Countryside and are thrilled to be here. What is the process for determining where students will be going, if they'll be staying at Countryside versus going across town?
Thank you very much. Similar to the question about how are we going to decide, or what's my personal preference with new construction versus addition and renovation, the answer is all of you. So we're going to be going through a process through feasibility, which is the first phase of the design. We're in it now. Part of that will be working through a series of community meetings. We'll be working with Beth and her staff and getting the word out through the PTO and Newton Public Schools to really engage solidly with the parents. I firmly believe that that decision should be a group decision with the parents. If we stay on site, we have an opportunity to far less disrupt this neighborhood, but we need to be careful with how we do it. It's done all the time. Outside of Newton, people do on-site projects all over the Commonwealth, all over the country. So it's very easy to do. It's very easy to safely do. You can control noise, you can control dust. It is a little inconvenient. The big thing we're gonna have to do a really good job here with, though, is parking. Parking is a challenge. The good news is, though, I don't have to tell the teachers where to park, and I don't want to tell the teachers where to park, but I can tell the contractors where to park because I can write that right into the contract. And I have a responsibility, I believe, in this neighborhood to do that and to share it with the community before I write it into the contract. So that'll be an iterative process, but really informed by the parents. So if you have a personal preference, email me at jmorse@newtonma.gov or give me a call. My cell is 617-594-2564.
So my husband and I live on Walnut Street, just up the street from here, and I have several comments. One is, I cannot believe that you're actually going to get construction people not to show up until 7. So that's one thing. I just cannot believe that that's going to happen since they drive by us all the time, going very fast. I don't know where people are going to park. I think that's going to be a problem, and we're going to have to deal with it. I also think that the amount of money just for what you're asking for, it seems very, very small considering what we would get. I mean, I thought it was going to be $10,000, not $300, and I'm kind of amazed by that. And I guess that's it.
For many people, this is doable. For some, it's just a bridge too far. They're barely hanging on here in Newton, and it's the last straw. But for others, I think if the decision by the community is to keep the kids in school and Countryside and build on another part of the property here, what we would end up doing is what's called a neighborhood parking plan. And we look at literally every street and say, so 10 teachers are going to park on this street, 6 are going to park over there, 5 over there. Poor Beth is going to have a nightmare of parent drop-off and figuring out how, when parents come to gather, how we do it. And it's work, and it takes a little bit of a sense of humor by the neighbors because there will be cars on the street for the 18 to 24 months of construction. And as Josh said, the people who are the construction vehicles that are going by at 6 a.m. now, they don't work for us. We can actually control our folks, and there will be occasional lapses, and you'll call Josh, and we'll fix it. Yeah.
For any of you who haven't taken part in the meetings that Josh mentioned, I have, and they've been really interesting, and I would encourage you to do it. I don't know how you access that, how people access that. I'm now on the email list, but they're very interesting.
So folks can email us at countryside@newtonma.gov, and that comes directly to myself and my team, and then we can sign you up to get notices, and I will give you the project website address if you email me. So there is. We have one coming up next week. Thank you very much. Tuesday night, 6 o'clock, and we will get that invite out. Yes?
Can I add one thing real fast? Also, if you go on the city website and you go to the public buildings, there's a calendar, a very handy calendar that shows all the meetings that are coming up, and you can actually click on that meeting and it'll take you to the Zoom sign-up link. But I also strongly, strongly recommend joining the Countryside email listserv as well.
And I promise our meetings are dialogues. You're not just going to listen to us talk. You're right at the table with us.
I want to give a shout out to Emily Prenner, who just answered that question. Emily is a school committee member, and she's doing lots of things, but one is she's been the long-term key resource for all the school buildings that have been renovated. So she's another good resource if you're interested. Sorry, Emily. But Emily Prenner is a good person. Somebody else here had their hand up. Let me go to somebody else first and then come back to you.
So if this does not pass, what happens to Countryside, specifically the MSBA money? Do we lose it?
So it's the awful, dreadful question. So if our voters vote no, so what happens both to the building projects and to the these are all important initiatives. The problem is there simply aren't enough dollars, and they just get spread out over many, many, many more years. So it just slows it way down. No, it's going to be more. So our debt capacity, we have something called a capital improvement plan, which we submitted the same night that we brought forward the override proposal. We've got lots of things to invest in. If we want to grow the number of dollars going to cover debt service, we actually need the override. Sorry. Anybody else? Then let me go to one more person, then come back to you. Sure, one more question. So it'll just get really delayed, and the problem with the Countryside one is you're leaving on the table about a third of the costs we hope to be absorbed by the state. So it's particularly awful to leave those dollars, but we won't have the debt service capacity without the override. So
we would be, just to rephrase it, we would be at risk of losing the MSBA grant.
Yep. The question was, so might we lose the matching dollars from the state? And the answer is yes.
Over the past few years, a lot of school districts have seen a drop in enrollment. Can you talk about if Newton is seeing a similar trend and how you're planning for that as part of the building?
Do you want to take that? We'll let you take it.
So, yeah, all of these surrounding districts as well as Newton are experiencing a drop in enrollment. Some of that is demographically driven and was predicted and forecast by demographers and our planning department prior to the pandemic. The pandemic has accelerated and exacerbated that trend as well, so we've actually seen a significant decrease. We've returned in our most recent enrollment projection and look to the pre-pandemic patterns. So there was a drop that hasn't totally recovered, but we're now back on the trajectory that we were expecting to be on. So district-wide, there is a drop in enrollment. I believe that the Countryside district still has projected stability or increases in enrollment based on some of the development here in the residential neighborhoods. So specific to this neighborhood and then the construction at this school, the decrease in enrollment isn't quite as relevant to the structures. That's my understanding. Anybody can comment further too.
Toby said it beautifully. I think the next logical question is, so why do we need more money for the Newton Public Schools if the number of children enrolled? To me, it's really easy. The needs of our students in the last decade have absolutely expanded. So fewer kids, but higher needs. So.
I knew right where you're going. So we get this question a lot, which is even before when we had expanding enrollment, how do you know you're building a big enough school? How do you know that you're not going to be 1953, 1954 and going, we need to build an addition because the school we just finished is not big enough? So right now our target design enrollment for the Countryside School is 465 students. That's about the same size as the Ainger School. Now, target, it's a draft. We still have to work with the school committee. There's a process that we have to go through. But that is going to give us the capacity to absorb what right now is projected to be increase in enrollment in the Countryside School District. Countryside's a little unique in that in this district, especially in this part of Newton, the elementary schools are more spread out. So there's less opportunity to kind of move kids around. kids in this area want to stay in this area, and I think you probably want to keep your kids in this area. The other thing I think is important to point out, and I certainly look to Aisha and Toby if they'd like to chime in, but we are also taking advantage of this new school to bring the STRIDE program, which is a special education program, into the Countryside School. It's a district-wide program, and I think one of the amazing things about this is that oftentimes these district-wide programs are in schools, in other schools in the district that are kind of accessible and have some of the special education spaces to support them. But in these new school builds, and we're doing the same thing at Franklin. Franklin is going to have the Spark and Stride. Spark program at Franklin. Spark is here. All right, Spark here, Stride there. But incredible opportunities. You're building a brand new school or an addition renovation. It's fully accessible, has all those support spaces, everything from, the hearing assisted program or hearing assisted equipment, our acoustical design of the building, physical mobility, full elevators, accessible restrooms, universal design and inclusive design. These are incredible opportunities to bring those kids into a school that is designed for them, to support them and allow them to excel.
I'll add one other thing that Josh Morse's team has done that is really smart. We are redesigning and rebuilding the current Lincoln Elliott School at a new site over at 150 Jackson. What they've done is they've figured out what they think are just the right number of classrooms, but they have designed where a 4-classroom addition would go if we need it. And they're designing it right now. They're not building it, but they're making it all work. So it's kind of a smart. Let me jump over to you.
Hi, thank you. I'm one of the new parents in this school. I was a second grader and a fourth grader. And one of the questions I was interested in learning about tonight is, I think you touched a little bit on how the outside and the wetlands and trees and preservation will be an element of design while the school is going to be constructed. I was particularly interested in knowing, especially when we're building in this time, energy efficiency is the buzzword. In the design element of the school, what all green elements will be considered, especially knowing the cost of construction of a green building is very comparable to making it usual and benefits to the operating costs and all. So.
Thank you very much. I'll try to be brief because this is one I could talk about for a while. I love this part of design. So the question was, what kind of green and sustainable elements do we have in the school? So we are going to be fossil fuel free. We are targeting a net zero school. So what does fossil fuel mean, or fossil fuel free mean? We're going to be a fully electric school. We are going to have some form of heat pump technology that will allow us to operate fossil fuel free here, drastically reduce our carbon footprint. We are going to target net zero using passive house standards. This is where we make our building envelope extremely efficient and drive our air leakage ratio way down. Through integrated design, we're going to drive down our heating and cooling requirements, thereby reducing the size of our equipment. And to answer your question about the cost, believe it or not, our latest models, and I think one of the things that's important to point out too, to take a quick step back, and I'll jump right back to this, is that we're doing a lot right now within our current budget. The Lincoln Elliott School, the Newton Early Childhood Program project, these are major capital projects that we're paying for right now out of our operating budget. So to the mayor's point, we're doing as much as we possibly can within our budget, within our debt limit. This is to go above and beyond that and attack and address these schools that are incredibly critical. But the Newton Early Childhood Program project, when we bid that out, the cost per square foot was $2 per square foot less for a fully electric heat pump solution building than for a condensing gas-fired system. So it is actually less to install, and when you make your envelope tight, it's less to operate. So how do you do it when escalation is going up? It's actually less expensive to install and less expensive to operate, so that's a very easy decision. That's only one element, one piece of the sustainability pie. There's a lot of it from solar orientation so that we're maximizing our renewable energy opportunities, stormwater opportunities, irrigation wells for water consumption, low flow flushometers, but not too low. It's an elementary school. You know, LED, lighting controls, building management systems, night setbacks. I could go on, but there's a lot that we're doing here. And just a quick shout out to our design review committee, a whole bunch of resident design professionals who volunteer a tremendous amount of their time helping us along the way, keeping up with the latest, greatest in technology.
Can I also just make sure that somebody didn't misunderstand what Josh said really early on? There isn't just one toilet in the Countryside School. I saw some people looking quizzically. There are a lot of toilets. We could have more, though.
So I have a question about the construction. Yes. If we shut the school down, would it make the construction schedule go faster? Because the parking and more space can be used to avoid piling and also all the, anyway, vehicular circulation. And another question is if we keep the school open while doing the new construction, would that eliminate the option of the layout of the new buildings? Then the last question is the northern land, the mixed-use commercial project on Needham Street. Would that, because there's a lot of residential units will be added if when it is done, new kids, I assume will be more kids coming into Countryside. Would you count for the new potential kids when you design school?
And I was mentioning one of our design review committee members right here. Thank you very much. So great questions. I'll go in reverse this time. So the Northland project, we absolutely, our projections, Newton Public Schools, include the students coming from there. If memory serves me correct, about 62 students-ish that we expect. That's part of the reason why we are building extra capacity here, but it's also one of the reasons that the mayor was worked over the Northland developers quite well and had them kick in some money for our project. To your question of the site, so the interesting thing about this site is that it's about 2.5 times the site that we're used to working with. We're coming on the heels of Ainger and Cabot, which were incredibly small sites. So I'm looking forward to it. We can absolutely build on this site with the school occupied and have all of the land area that we need. Quite frankly, one of the options that we might look at, we need to keep the playground active because Beth and the teachers will kill me if there's no playground for 2 years. But when we start to think about the fields, one of the things that we'll want to take a good look at is, you know, can we take a little of the fields and have some on-site contractor parking to alleviate the pressure in the community? Might be one option. It will be, but we're gonna have to tear it all up and reseed and we gotta get the drainage. We got all kinds of work left to do. But so those are things that we can study and talk about as a community. To your question of whether or not that will limit our options, I don't think so, because the one place on the site that we don't want to build again, I don't think, is where we are, which is the lowest part of the site, where we have the water table issues. It's also the wetlands and the riverfront protection area. I don't know how I would ever convince the Conservation Commission to let us do what is here now. Much of it is just not allowed. So everything is saying come this way. And on this side of the site, with the land area we have the ability to flip it any which direction we want. So it provides a lot of options, even if we stay on the upper side of the site. Got you. So I don't expect that it's going to impact our construction schedule at all, again, because that goes back to the size of the area that we're working with. I think the biggest thing that's going to impact that is new construction versus addition renovation. An addition renovation would obviously mean that students would have to go to the Lincoln Elliott School. And in this case, what we would end up having to do is the modulars obviously would all have to come down, and we would have to figure out how we would build an addition. I've started to think about it. We wouldn't want to build in the wetlands, and I don't think we could, which would mean we'd have to do something where the playground and the edge of the parking lot is. It would feel very disconnected. You'd have like this arm sticking out over here. We'll evaluate it, but that's a 24-month schedule all day long. Building new in any configuration is 18 months, sometimes a little faster.
And you might be the last question.
My question goes back to taxes, so it's really for you. My understanding of tax systems for towns and cities is that high taxes, good schools. I grew up in Westwood, high taxes, great schools. So I moved here 10 months ago because the taxes were high, the schools are supposed to be great. So where is the tax money being spent if it's not directed at the schools?
So the question is, so why the heck do you need more money? Where are we spending all our dollars? So it's a big city. We're 18 square miles. We have police department with a couple hundred people, a fire department with a couple hundred people, a DPW department with a couple hundred people. We thankfully, I think, and importantly, do parks and playgrounds and arts and culture. And we have a veteran service officer, and we're picking up your trash, we're picking up your recycling. When the snow comes, welcome to winter in Newton, we will plow the roads, and we're running a water sewer stormwater system here. And we have a fabulous library, and on and on. But most of the dollars go to our Newton Public Schools, which is fitting and proper and good. And they're stretched thin right now. They keep expanding the services that we're providing to our kiddos. And they're good and important and necessary, as we really believe in this tripod of academic excellence and educational equity and social and emotional well-being. So yes, this is a time where I'm going out to the voters and asking people to dig deeper in their pockets. The budget's online if you're kind of a finance nerd like I am, and happy to go into any part of it that's of interest to people. That may have been our last question. I'm very grateful, Beth, to you and your team for all you do every day. Aisha and Toby, you're amazing. Josh Morse, thank you very much. We look forward to working with you and answering any questions about the override or other questions that come along. Thank you all.